And a good Tuesday evening to you, meteorologist Dan Skeldon. It is the final evening of February, the last night of meteorological winter. Spring begins tomorrow in a weather person's world. Of course, it's March 20th according to the calendar. So we've made it to the end, or almost to the end, of what has been one of the easiest winters on record in terms of cold, in terms of snow, in terms of ice. Very unwintry. The winter that wasn't. It's been our sprinter. It's a combination of spring-like temperatures through a lot of winter. Now, there was snow in North Jersey, especially last night. There could be again as we head into Friday, but it's going to change to rain. Still no immediate winter weather threats. But we all know that the month of March is a very fickle one. It's a very volatile one. And we have had Marches in the past where we've had several, fairly significant snowfalls or nor'easters with heavy snow or ice or flooding or wind. So we can't let our guard down in March. And given how easy this winter has been, there are some signs that we're going to pay for it in March. We will see. We do have a storm coming in this Friday. Again, that's going to be mostly rain. And then I would circle next weekend as a potential, and we'll talk about that as we welcome in my co-host Palma Shiles on this last evening of February. How are you, Palma?
Hi, Dan, and hello everyone tuning in to this week's episode of Tidal Flooding Talk.
Yeah, we are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and a few topics this week. We want to wrap up one month, look ahead to the next. Talk a little politics, which we don't normally do. We're not going to dive into presidential politics, but a new bill working its way through the Assembly in New Jersey, promising for homeowners and renters, and we'll chat about that as well. But where do you want to begin tonight, Palma?
Well, why don't we recap on February, and you could let us know what you think we could expect in March.
February is, shortest month of the year. We had a fraction of an inch of snow. We had a coating on the first day of February, and we had a very, very fine coating this past Saturday. And that's it for snow. This is still the least snowiest winter on record in South Jersey. And we're not out of the woods yet because we can get snow in March. In a really off year, we can get snow in April. But right now, it is one of the warmest and the least snowiest winter on record. February kind of followed suit. A lot of days in the 50s and 60s, lack of cold, lack of snow. However, as we head into March, it's a colder pattern setting up. Now, cold in March isn't the same as cold in January. You're not going to dip to, well below zero wind chills. And if you do get snow, it doesn't last as long. But I would watch a period from like March 10th to March 20th, the Ides of March, if you will, the middle of the month, for some colder weather and maybe a pretty good chance of a storm. Doesn't mean snow, doesn't mean tidal flooding, doesn't mean rain, but just kind of identifying right around next weekend for something that could be troublesome along the East Coast.
Okay, so we could still potentially be seeing flooding in the next month.
And nor'easters and rain and wind and snow. Again, it's been a quiet winter, not only in terms of cold and snow, but in terms of flooding and nor'easters. We haven't had many, and that's a great thing. We haven't had many coastal storms to track or nor'easters to track, not much flooding. I will just put a little caveat. There is a coastal flood advisory this evening for a little minor tidal flooding along the Ocean County shoreline. Next couple of hours, very minor nuisance stuff, but just throw that out there. So it's not like tidal flooding is absent. It's just it's been a quiet winter on every front. But I will again circle next weekend, right around then. I will say we have my daughter Kenzie turning 4.
Oh my God.
All right, so we have her first big birthday party planned for that weekend. So right there, that tells me there's going to be a storm because we have big plans that weekend. And also, I have my in-laws with us that weekend. So wouldn't it be nice if they have a big winter storm and they get snowed in and get to spend extra time with your in-laws? Everyone loves that, right? And I'm just kidding. I love my in-laws. But all that stuff aside makes me think that, next weekend, March 10th, March 11th, we will see we will see, some potential trouble. There's a pretty good signal for a storm. Now, we had a good signal in December and it never happened. This signal may be even a little bit better. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. So we'll see. But I do think no early spring. We've had a pretty spring-like winter, but I do still think this cold that will come down the middle of the month, and then there could be some stormy potential in the middle of March. And we've had pretty good nor'easters in March, pretty good rounds of tidal flooding in March. Most recently, March 2014, so 9 years ago, and more recently, March 2018, 5 years ago, we had significant storms with snow. In both of those Marches, there was significant snow, and there was tidal flooding with several of those storms as well. So March is March Madness that everyone is into March because of basketball. Well, I always say there's like a meteorological March Madness sometimes too. It can be a month where it can go from 80 to heavy snow, and sometimes in a day or two. And it can go back to 80 again. So March is a roller coaster month, and the middle of the month is what I'm watching.
And I think Atlantic City is having the St. Patrick's Day parade again this year after it being canceled because of COVID the last several years. So hopefully they won't be impacted by any bad storms.
Yeah, it's a great parade. It's a great event. You don't want flooding, obviously, so people can't get there. You don't want a storm. You want nice weather for it. You're not guaranteed it, but I know, it was initially canceled, and they're bringing it back this year, which is great. It's such a good event, and we want nice weather for that. St. Patrick's Day can bring snow too. March 2014, we had like 6 inches of snow on St. Patrick's Day. So I know the parade isn't on St. Patrick's Day necessarily, but the middle of March can do some weird things weather-wise. So we'll see if this March behaves itself or is a little troublesome. And I think it will be the latter. I think it's going to be, January was one of the warmest ever. February, one of the warmest ever. I don't think March will be. I think March is going to be on the cooler side, not cold, but cooler than average, which we haven't seen in a while.
Okay. All right, I guess we should jump right into our politics with the renters and sellers bill.
Yeah, it's something that passed the assembly, and it came across my Twitter feed, and it still has to officially get passed and signed and that, but it's something that passed unanimously from what I read, and to have anything passed unanimously, with all Democrats and all Republicans agreeing is very rare these days. But it ultimately, protects home buyers and renters in New Jersey by making the property that you're interested in renting or buying basically disclose the flood risk. And that's something you have a lot of stuff disclosed when you're buying a house. You just went through the process, right? I mean, it's very complicated, inspections, and usually the homeowner has to disclose a whole bunch of stuff. So why not add flooding to that? And because that's something that's very, very useful to a potential home buyer or renter, and it's something that they probably don't know about, especially if they've never lived in a flood zone. To be able to disclose, hey, this is your flooding risk. This is the flooding history. I'm not sure exactly how much has to be disclosed. I'm going to read up more on it, but I think it's a great idea. And apparently lawmakers do too, since there was a unanimous passing of the assembly anyway.
Right. And aside from whatever does need to be disclosed, it's always a good idea to do your own research. There are other resources available. You can call your local municipality, talk to the floodplain manager, inquire about the particular property. We've had surveyors on here before who've explained that every property is unique. Just because your neighbors, the property next door doesn't flood doesn't mean that yours wouldn't. There's other things, flood proofing, how high yours is, and things like that. So it's important to do your homework before you purchase a home or even rent somewhere.
It is. And most people probably do their homework, which is exactly what you should do when you're making an investment like that, especially if you're buying a home. But we all know that there are people out there that probably don't do their homework, are so excited for a shore home. Oh, I'm buying a shore home, and they may not be aware of the flooding risks. The fact that it's going to be mandatory, you're going to get a piece of paper or a packet or whatever, say, hey, here is your flood risk. It's there for you to, even for the unprepared buyer or the unresearched buyer, it will be there, presuming this is passes and officially gets signed into law. I think it's a great thing. But you're right. You should not, not do your research. You should just let whatever the disclosure is supplement what you do on your own.
Right, and there is a lot of information available. FEMA has brochures online, and a lot of the municipalities now, ever since Sandy, have been putting information right on their websites too. So that's also helpful. So yes, I do think this bill is a start, and it should, at least make people aware that their property could flood. So, but there is more involved for sure.
There is, and again, I'll just say it again because I'm amazed. I mean, it's a great piece of legislation, but the fact that it was unanimous in the assembly. The only other thing that I can recall, and it's somewhat related to weather, that was unanimous, it passed the Senate, the United States Senate, was the year-round daylight saving time. So we would permanently be on daylight saving time. It passed the Senate, but the House didn't take it up, so it never became law. But it had unanimous passing in the Senate, and I just don't recall much stuff passing unanimously. So that was daylight saving time on the national level. This is New Jersey flood disclosure on the state level. But still, I think the fact that all politicians are in agreement probably means it's a good thing. And with especially to those new to the shore or new to an area, I think it definitely is a great idea, and I'd love to see it implemented. I'd also love to do more research on it and see, exactly how much do you have to disclose.
Yeah, and it is nice to know that, these politicians do recognize that this is important and it's a significant issue, potentially.
Absolutely. So that's our little piece of politics. And again, we don't dive into it that often, but flood-related ideas, legislation is one of the things we do talk about. And it's essentially, since we don't have much weather to talk about either, I didn't really expand on our late week storm. So we're going to get milder and drier tomorrow. We have a couple showers Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Not a big deal, but Thursday is mild as well. And then we do have a storm Friday and Friday night. I think for South Jersey, Delaware, it's a soaking rain. North Jersey, Eastern PA, you might get a coating to an inch or two of snow, and then it changes to rain and washes it away. I haven't looked into the flooding threat yet. I have to look at the timing, but it is a soaking rain, and it will impact you Friday and Friday night. So that's something we will watch. And then the weekend is quiet, and early next week is quiet. And then the time to circle is that following weekend, March 10th, 11th, right in there, the 9th, 10th, 11th. That weekend is what winter weather lovers should circle and check back on, because I always say that we can circle these days. I don't think I've had a day circled all winter besides around Christmas, and nothing happened. So we actually have a period to watch in terms of winter weather. And Friday night, at the very least, there could be some poor drainage flooding with our rainstorm coming in to wrap up the week, but it should be out of here in time for the weekend.
Right, and if you are watching live on Facebook, you can add comments or ask questions to us. We do have quite a few comments here. Rob Nestor says this is like a year without a Santa Claus. So I guess he's referring to the lack of snow and lack of cold weather.
And that's being at the shore, a non-snowy winter is not totally unheard of. I mean, but we haven't even seen an inch, and that is rare. There's been like 2 or 3 winters on record in 80 years where there hasn't been an inch of snow. So this is pretty rare, and it is among the least snowiest winters on record, from like parts of Connecticut all the way down to DC, Baltimore, Virginia, much of New Jersey, Eastern PA. So it's pretty. It is pretty rare, and I think I like the comparison, Rob. So I'll work on getting some in March. We'll see if we can get some at the last minute, right before spring begins.
Right, maybe by next Tidal Flooding Talk episode, you'll see some snow in the future.
Yeah, I mean, next Tuesday, we'll be on again, 7:30 every week, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. And that days I'm circled next weekend will be in full focus, and we'll see, all right, is it going to be just very cold and dry, or do we actually have a storm to track? So we'll see when it gets a little bit closer. But right now, the signal's there. It's something to watch. It's a glimmer of hope for snow lovers, but given the way the winter has been, let's not hold our breath. And if you are someone who roots against tidal flooding and big nor'easters, this has been your winter. I'd love to say we're going to keep that streak going. We will see. No immediate nor'easters in our future, but again, Friday night, some windy, rainy weather. Wouldn't surprise me if there's at least some tidal flooding. Is it a major storm? No, it doesn't look to be like that right now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, everyone watching. Join us again next week, Tuesday at 7:30 for Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition.
All right. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.